Welcome back, everybody, to Good News, Bad News, the Libertarian Christian Roundtable, brought to you by the Libertarian Christian Institute. I'm joined by Norman Horn, Kerry Baldwin, and Mike Meharry, and we are going to talk about all the news that has affected you in the past several weeks. And starting off with the fact that we are just about to wrap up Black History Month, and something that's actually not very new or news, I should say, to libertarians is the fact that the government has been actively working against Black people for a very long time. And we're going to have Carrie actually explain this in one particular episode or case might be. So, Carrie, I'm going to have you explain what the heck was going on with Billie Holiday.
Yeah, so Billie Holiday is in my background here, and this was prompted by some advertisements that I kept seeing on Facebook for a new drama that Hulu is putting out, which is coming out tomorrow. Well, July 20,
For us,
excuse
it's
me.
tomorrow. Yeah.
For us, it's tomorrow, February 26th. And it's called The United States versus Billie Holiday. And at first I was like, well, what's this about? And I dug into it. And Billie Holiday was a very famous jazz blues singer of the 30s and 40s. Um, and she sang many songs, but there was one song that some guys in the federal government didn't like. It was called Strange Fruit. And Strange Fruit was actually a poem. It was originally published as a poem by a Jewish communist from the Bronx named Abel Mirapol. But it happened to be a poem about a lynching of an African American. So the song is very dark. The lyrics are incredibly dark. You can find it on YouTube now. But for Billie, it really resonated with her because she said that those were things that were still happening in the South at the time, and so she decided to sing it. And the some people from the federal government, Federal Bureau of Narcotics, to be exact, heard her singing it and didn't like what she was singing. They didn't like the message. They didn't like that, um, that it was basically activism through her art, through her performance. And so that's what this movie is about on Hulu. It's about her life and this story about the song Strange Fruit and what happened. And so the feds went after her. She was a known drug addict, and they wanted her to stop. They wanted her to stop singing just that song. And so a nightclub owner tried to get her to stop singing it. She refused, and she went on stage one night in 1939, and she went ahead and sang it anyways. And the feds were there and apparently arrested her. And so they arrested her on drug charges, though. So the guy that from the feds, his name was Ansingler, um, and he was a known racist and believed that drugs like marijuana and heroin and all that caused Black people to create the devil's music, and so he wanted to shut her down. Um, so at any rate, this story, they used all kinds of tactics against her. They put her in prison for drug charges. Um, when she was released, they used licensing to prevent her from singing in cabarets again. So there was a cabaret performance license that she had to get, and she was denied that by the authorities. Um, but she went ahead and she kept singing. She found other avenues, and she kept doing her work and singing the song. And eventually things started to catch up with her as far as her health was concerned, because obviously as a drug addict, that's going to negatively affect you. Yeah, and she wound up in the hospital for heart and lung problems, heart, lung, and liver problems. And Anslinger sent his agents to the hospital and had her handcuffed to her hospital bed and ordered the doctors to stop treating her, and she died within a few days. So that's what this new drama is about. And I find it really fascinating because I've known about Billie Holiday as a performer, as a singer, but I didn't know her story. And I noticed from her story that there were a lot of things that happened then that still go on today, like using licensing to create a barrier to entry for people from certain communities or who are too poor. Um, they used censorship through character assassination. So she was labeled a prostitute because her mother worked in a burlesque when she was younger. Um, and of course, they used uh, war on drug tactics before there was an actual war on drugs. So the site Rotten Tomatoes, as far as the critics are concerned, have given it sort of a meh 57% rating. Norm tells me that that's probably good news. It's probably going to be a
That's
good
better
thing,
than
but
Trump
it
did in the election. So I mean, at least
so at any
got to be
rate,
worth something.
yeah, I will say I will just put a little caution out there. They do have it looks like they do show scenes of illicit drug use, and I think I saw one scene of a lesbian kiss. But it might be something interesting to check out to understand this uh, the history of Billie Holiday and what she was singing for.
Well, I'll be interested to watch, and yeah, I'll hope to talk to you about that again sometime offline because that sounds pretty fascinating.
Yeah,
I mean, anybody should go. I mean, you should be listening to Billie Holiday's music anyway. It's
yeah,
wonderful stuff.
wonderful.
So, I man, what a tragic story though. I don't really
Yeah,
have
and
anything much to say to it.
I want to say, there's a lot of talk about, racism and how do we make reparations or whatever. That's a trigger word. But, living in New Mexico, we have Native Americans living here. And the one thing that I've learned about um, trying to get to know their history is to
Mhm.
just sit and listen to their stories. And so that's what drew me into these ads was there's a story behind this and I want to hear these stories. Like, yes, tell us the stories of what we don't know, what has happened to the African American community over, the decades, centuries, as a result of the government. Let's do that. I want to hear about that.
Yeah.
It exposes a myth that I think is really prevalent today that centralized government is a friend of minorities.
Yeah, yeah.
And this is just one example of hundreds, probably thousands of where just in the United States, the central government, the federal government has done horrible things to African Americans, Native Americans.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote an article for the 10th Amendment Center a couple of years ago about how the federal farm programs that were established in the 1930s were used in the 50s and 60s to basically steal land from Southern Black farmers,
Yep.
and transfer it to these large corporate agribusinesses. And this stuff goes on over and over again. This idea that the federal government is the friend of minorities is it doesn't stand up to actual history.
Yeah.